Hazel Nelson. I will be interviewing John Bowles, who at the time was at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. I will be asking him some questions tonight. And today is November 30th, 2005. How are you today?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay. Are you ready for these excellent questions?
Yeah, I would like to make one slight correction.
What?
Where I lived, we could see Pearl Harbor, and we could see, but I wasn't actually at Pearl Harbor because, of course, that was the military.
Okay. Well, where were you originally born, and what year did you move to Hawaii, and why?
Well, I was born in Japan, Karizawa, Japan, in 1933. When I was 2 years old, 2.5 years old, in 1936, we moved to Hawaii. And we moved because of the military buildup in Japan. And of course, when we got to Hawaii, we were attacked.
How old were you on the day of Pearl Harbor, and what grade were you in?
I was 8 years old, and I guess that put me in, I think, the 3rd grade.
Okay. What procedures took place during this time, and were they well planned and organized?
Could you clarify what you mean by procedures?
Like when people saw planes, were you at school, and did you have to...
Okay. This is the view that we saw on Sunday morning, December 7th. This is Diamond Head, and we were on 1,100 feet above sea level on Mount Alani Heights. So that was our view, and we saw Japanese planes flying back and forth. Okay, that was the setting for our view. No. Does that answer what you had in mind?
Did you have to, like, where were you? Like, did you have to get under any tables, or did you...
Well, what happened was that my father was a doctor, and he was on call that weekend. And he had been, at 2 o'clock in the morning, he had delivered the baby, and then he got home, okay? Then it was about time for him to go back to do his regular rounds.
Oh, boy.
And he was to leave my older sister and me for Sunday school. So we started off, we saw the planes. Well, we didn't really understand the significance of it at that point.
Yeah, that leads to my next question.
Yeah, what's the question?
Oh, what did you or did you not understand what exactly was happening during this event?
A lot of people thought it was sham battles, just practice runs, because there had been a lot of them before December 7th. We started down the hill and saw a big Chinese man looking out over the city like that, and asked him what was going on, and I can hear him to this day. He said, "Well, it's a sham battle." So we thought these were just American pilots, and we didn't know until we got to Sunday school what was happening. We got to Sunday school, and of course it was called off, and we knew we were under attack. And that out near Pearl Harbor. And he had some adventures. My sister and I were immediately evacuated to up the valley where the church was, and on the way we heard a whistling, and a bomb fell, and I guess the fellow taking us up there, the minister, told us to lie down. We were going to go to my aunt and uncle's house. We were told to lie down, put our heads down. We heard the explosion. Actually, I don't remember a thing about that. It must have been one of those things, that's traumatic, and you just don't remember. My sister did.
Okay,
So,
Yeah, that answered what were the adults doing to keep you and the other children safe. That answers that.
well, partly,
Oh.
but my mother was up still on the hill with my younger brother and my younger sister. And we were taken to be with my aunt and uncle, and I was there most of the day. I remember walking out and seeing a dog fight overhead. We weren't supposed to go out of the houses, but in most cases the parents tried to keep the kids inside.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yep. How much longer did you live in Hawaii after December 7th?
Well, I graduated from high school in 1952 and went on to college and some graduate work, and then my wife and I came back to Hawaii and lived there for 3.5 years, and then we moved to the state of Iowa. Eventually we got here in Greensboro.
Well, have you been able to keep up in touch with friends?
Yes, some of that's by mail, my best friends, but we also have a website on Yahoo, and people write in back and forth all the time. And there's a very, it's a very close feeling in my class. We had about 180 in the class, and a large percentage of those will go to the reunion. So we keep in touch. You know, when you feel close to somebody, you don't always have to be right there.
Yeah.
You can come back with them later on and take off just where you left off. And I think that's the way it is with my classmates.
Well, has all this affected you later in life?
Yikes, that's a hard question to answer. I hope it has made me a better world citizen. I hope it has made me much more sensitive to people and different views people have and hold. Those are the answers that come right now.
Yeah. So, most of your family on December 7th, your dad was working and your mom was at the house?
That's right.
Yeah, okay, that was that question. Who in your family was most affected?
Well, of course, my father was,
Yeah.
because he, at the hospital, he describes it as just bodies piled up all over. Some of them had lungs sticking out, intestines sticking out. They had to go through and decide which ones were well enough that they likely live. The others they couldn't do anything about. So he was pretty well affected. I would say probably the other one that was very much affected was my grandfather. My grandparents had lived in Japan for 40 years and were very close to the Japanese people. They left Japan in 1941 again because of the military buildup and came to Hawaii. Now, as soon as the attack came, prior to that, I should say, there was a lot of fear of sabotage. A lot of the higher-ups in government, in the military, thought that the local Japanese would blow up airplanes or some other thing, which didn't happen. But they were all suspected. And as early as that day, that afternoon, the father or the parents were whisked off and sent to detention, a lot of them. And my grandfather immediately to the family to help the families to deal with that quite dramatic thing that happened to them.
Okay. Well, I see that you wrote a book in this process, and what's the title, and how many people contributed to it?
Well, I would correct you in this respect.
Oh,
I didn't write the book.
okay.
I edited the book.
Okay.
What happened was that I was sitting in the Nimitz Museum in Fredericksburg, Texas, one day, and there were memorabilia from World War II all around. Chester Nimitz was the head of all the military operations in the Pacific. And I got to thinking about what had happened to us on that day. Mm-hmm. The planes, flying back and forth in Diamond Head, and then for some reason that I don't know, I got to wondering what had happened to my classmates on that day. Many of them lived in Honolulu just as I did. Well, we never talked about that kind of thing when we were kids, So I got to wondering about it, and I wrote to a few. And I got very interesting answers back. And so I decided to collect them, as many as wanted to contribute to book thing, folder with these stories for our 50th reunion. Well, I got about 85 or so, and most of them wanted then to have it included in the book. So I then was I was contacted by a publisher who got interested in the idea, and he went ahead and published the book. I wrote the introductory part, try to give a setting, and then I put the story of our family. And then the other ones all contributed the same thing. I asked for three things. I asked, well, first of all, every one of those had to have been in the class at some time. People come and go. Most of our classmates were there most of the time till we graduated. And then I asked, so they had to have been in our class at some time. I asked them to write a section at the beginning on why their family was in Hawaii in the first place and where they came from. And that's what I thought was almost the most interesting part of the book. And then the December 7th story, and then finally a short section on what happened to them after graduation. So I put that together, and last year it was published.
Well, that's all the questions, and thank you very much for...
You're very
Hazel,
welcome.
on top is the book itself. Would you like to,
Well, we have the book review.
Oh, why don't you let's get a,
Well, how long has it?
well, because I got all these markers. Let me get a better looking
well,
one.
just the cover, just like.
Yeah, hold it like this.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah,
that
this
is
is the
all the questions, Hazel? Or was okay.
Well, I'll be glad to answer some really tough ones if you want.
I like the
'cause
last
he
question
can
you had there.
Cut some out.
The last one, what gave you the idea to write this book?
No, the one about.
Oh, yes, that one. Why do you not think that the atom bomb was a wise action after Pearl Harbor?
Well, that's a pretty tough question to answer, and I try as best I can. I think it's controversial as to what was actually happening, how much longer the war would have gone on had that not been dropped. I'm kind of skeptical when people just offhandedly say, well, that saved so many American lives. But it says nothing about the large number of innocent people who died. So I don't think it was a good idea. We get upset now when civilians are killed. In my opinion, it depends on what side of the coin you're on as to whether it is something that is a terrorist act or whether it's done to save the people you're fighting for.
Yeah.
It's a very tough question. And I personally think it was a mistake because we killed many, many children, and the civilians had no part at all in the war.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for answering these questions for me and helping me out on my project.
You're very welcome, and anytime you want to ask any more, I'll be glad to.
Okay.
Or if your classmates want to ask me sometime,
Hear that, Miss Hensley?
I'm glad to do the best I can.
Okay.
Yeah.